everybody? We are live for Money Mondays. It's an exciting day because I don't know. Do you call it like a co host? Do you call it? You're not a guest. She's not a guest, ladies and gentlemen. She's the co host. She's a friend of mine, my good friend Kat Alford. So I'm getting ready to bring her into the live stream and let's get this thing going. Let's get it going. Boom, 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 boom. Wait for it. There she is. My girl, Kat Alford.
Hey,
We're both
Jason.
in here. What's happening, girl?
Just living the dream, man. Just here in my home office, living the dream.
there it is. So for those of you who don't know, this is my good friend Kat Alford. So she is a financial educator. In my opinion, one of the original mommy bloggers. You know what I'm saying? At least the original one that I ever met. And
That makes it true.
and so we partnered up, and Kat was already doing her thing on Instagram, doing like a Money Monday kind of talk on Instagram, and I was doing Financial Fridays, and I said, why don't we team up and why don't we bring the people Money Mondays? So my girl Kat Alford is in the building. So Kat, let's just talk a little bit about, well, let me brag on you for a minute, then you can fill in the gaps of where I
Okay.
missed anything. So she's a wife, she's a mother of twins. she was she built, wasn't it Budget Blonde? Was that the original website?
Yes, that
Yeah.
was the original. Wow, we have known each other a long
You
time.
ain't think I was gonna go there. Budget Blonde was like the original site. Now she's all spiced up and spiffy at CatherineAlford.com. Six-figure money earner from home, ladies and gentlemen. So pay attention. And the girl knows her stuff. And I thought, we both bring a different dynamic. And I couldn't think of a better person who's doing her thing as a female, as a wife, as a mother, and as an entrepreneur to team up with and bring you Money Monday. So did I miss anything? Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Soon to be author, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
Right? Working
I'm
on a
really
book.
excited about that.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, just got the book deal right before quarantine happened. I'd been trying to get a book deal for 4.5 years. So lots and lots of rejection finally happened. So that's what I've been doing the last few months is just working on actually writing the book now that I got the book deal. So
Yeah. So and then for those who are watching that maybe from Cat's community that don't understand, who I am. I'm a stock market coach, options trader, and we both go to a conference called FinCon, which is a financial conference. And so that's where we initially connected and just begin this relationship here. So we said we go get together, we go talk money, we go talk finances. And for this first one, we said let's introduce ourselves to the world, to the community, and kind of just start from there. So Kat, I'd love for you to kick it off with, like, what was your first like money experience that led you down this road? And I'm sure there's many, like there's your kid money experience. I have like my teenage money experience. I have my young adult college money experience. Then I have my grown up. But like, take us back and just give me an experience, and I'll match your experience. When did you realize like money was important? You wanted to be in this space, talking about it and helping other people.
yeah, no, that's a great question. And yeah, I've got tons of like money stories from being a kid, but as far as this business, this lifestyle that I've created to enable me to be with my kids so much, I think I was in graduate school when I started the blog, and I got a $12,000 a year assistantship, and I was living on that. And I was in grad school, and it was like these 3 hour like classes, and it was really heavy, like detailed reading. And I just wanted an outlet, like a creative outlet. And so I'd always liked money, always been good at saving, even as a kid, always been just a good manager of my money. And so I just started writing Budget Blonde of all my thrift store finds, of my first apartment by myself, of, living on this $12,000 a year. And I saw, this is really early into blogging. This is 10 years ago. So not that many blogs around. And I saw these other bloggers go full time. Young House Love is the blog. I'm sure a lot of people know them. They're still extremely popular. And they had a baby, and their daughter came home, and both of them stayed home, took care of the baby, and started running the blog. And it was like a light bulb went off, like, I'm on this path to have this career, but like, what if I could also make my blog make money? Like, what if I could do that too? And then when I had kids, like, I wouldn't have to get in my car and go anywhere, but I could still have something for me. And it was kind of like right then, really early on, I knew that it was possible because I saw them do it.
That's what's up. And what's interesting about your story, at least that I'm hearing, is that you built a lifestyle where you lived off $12,000 a year. And that's like
Isn't that pretty? Pretty.
but that's commendable though. And here's
Yeah.
why I say that's so commendable. It's because a lot of people that I find, because I'm more so in the investment space, but what's cool about what you did was, if you ask somebody right now that makes $50,000, say, how much does it take to live? And they say $50,000. They might say 60. They going in the hole $10,000 every
Yeah.
month, right? But what I find interesting is when you talk to somebody who's lived off $12,000, and then you talk to somebody who makes $50,000, and you kind of ask yourself, well, why does this person need $38,000 more, and this person can live off $38,000 less? And it goes to show we can literally live off less than what we think we can, but we typically don't want to make the sacrifice. But you made that sacrifice for you and your family just to make it happen and to get through. Whether you did it on purpose or whether
Yeah.
you was forced to live off 12,000, you lived that life.
Well, not only that, but and the lesson that you can build something that can bring in six figures, multi six figures from that kind of a place. I think a lot of people, they don't know where to start. They think they can't invest. They think they can't invest in themselves. And it's like it's a little $10 domain name started this whole career that, a lot of us bloggers are just kind of inventing along the way. And you just don't need a lot. You don't need investors. You don't need thousands of dollars and courses. Like, you just got to get started, get going.
Absolutely. So you saw, I forget the name of that company, but they grew their thing, and then you
Yeah.
started to say, like, man, I can do this too. And that's important because a lot of people, when they see people, like, we're regular people, first of all, like, we both live in Michigan. Like, if it wasn't the quarantine, I'd have you over and we'd be doing the
Yeah.
show live. Right?
Yep.
I mean, you've been over to my house, we're friends, we
Yep.
know each other. And what's important is that we're regular people. And I love, and I think that's what we're trying to do for people, is that you said you saw somebody else with a blog, with a domain name, and you thought, I like money, I like blogging. Why can't I do this? And I think that's so important that people understand that it starts with that inspiration and not necessarily being skeptical, right? Because you could have said, I bet you they don't make that type of money. I wonder if it's even real, right? Oh, they
Yeah.
have a course. Why are they trying to teach it if they're so successful? You could have took the skeptical route, but instead you said, this is interesting. Like, if they can do it, how come I can't do it? And I think, man, just that mindset
Yep.
is like something that people need to grab and hold on to, because so oftentimes we take the negative approach to it, and it's like, who does she think she is? And, well, I bet her husband did this and that's why she was able to, right? It's like, no, forget all that. It's like, if she did it, I can do it. If my man is investing, I can invest. And
Yep.
not always necessarily thinking that somebody is trying to get over on you. And I think that's what attracted us to come together, is that we both have a passion for letting people know that we're not special. We just did what most people won't do, and we took the risk that most people won't take.
Yeah, and what about you? Because let's say people from my community are coming over, and let's say they go through your videos and they see some of your most popular videos, making $100,000 in one day in the stock market, making $80,000 in 1 week on this trade. And these are a lot of the things. So a lot of people might be coming in and seeing you at the end, but I know your beginning. I know you in your basement I know your story of your basement at your mom's house. So why don't you share? Because I think people need to see the beginning, because sometimes if they see only the end, that's where that disconnect comes. It becomes unrelatable and it might seem unachievable, but you have to start, from the early days.
Yeah, absolutely. And so similar to you, it wasn't $12,000. I was living off like -$1,000. I was living off credit cards and everything. But for me, when I first got into this space, I'll tell you a little bit of story about debt, because I know you talk to people about debt and getting out of debt. So for me, what happened was I took a $10,000 student loan. So I borrowed money to get into the stock market. I initially started with $500, and I made my first $100, and I was like, so if I had $5,000, I would have made 1,000. It's like, if I had 10,000, I would have made 2,000. I would have been rich. And so all I could think about was, well, where do I get $10,000 from? And so I had a scholarship to Wayne State, and then I also applied for financial aid because we were, we were a single family household, didn't make that much. I knew I would get financial aid, and so they double paid the account, the scholarship paid, and then the financial aid paid as well. And then I got a refund check back, and so I knew that was going to happen. And I took the refund check and got into the stock market. What most people don't know is after making like $100,000, moving to the suburbs, bought a Lexus on 20-inch rims, all that stuff, and I started day trading for like 2, 3 years. What most people don't know is that I eventually lost all that money, and because I stopped doing what it took to get there. But even worse is I had some bad tax advice. My guy was like, "You can write off your car, you can write off this," and so like when the IRS came down with the hammer, it's like, well, how do you need a car for business and you work from home? So like all the stuff I thought, I'm just like, I'm a business owner, I'm an investor, I can write this stuff off. And when the stuff hit the fan, it was like, actually, all you can write off is your internet connection. Cause like that's all. I'm like, that's it, just the cable bill. So
I only write off half of my cable bill because the other half is personal.
exactly right. And so what ended up happening was not only did I lose all that money, I still hadn't paid back the $10,000 student loan at that point. I don't think I shared this anywhere else. I still hadn't paid back the 10,000 because I was like, oh, I'll pay it back later. So now I owe student loans about $10,000. Then I lost all my money. I started living off credit cards. I had no job, so I went like super negative. Then I had to move back home humbly with my tail between my legs. I had to move back home with my mom. But here's the thing that came out of that situation for me. Knowing that I had made hundreds of thousands of dollars trading or day trading in the stock market, I, you couldn't tell me that it didn't work. Does that make sense? Like I
Yep.
had tasted it. I know I made some mistakes. I didn't pay taxes. So by the way, I owed like $50,000 in taxes
Which
after
is a
not.
fortune back then, which is
Yeah.
like, so you can't even fathom coming up with that many years ago, right?
And you might think, well, how do you owe $50,000? Well, I was day trading full time for 3 years, and my guy was like, "You don't have to worry about paying for 3 years before a penalty kick in." So I'm like, I was deferring payments for three. I wasn't even filing my taxes for 3 years. I'm like, I'll file later. We can defer. I mean, it was just horrible tax advice. But
Yeah.
I'm like a 21, 22-year-old kid. My biggest check before that, I worked at Best Buy or Sprint. Like
Mhm.
I didn't know much about taxes. And so I had to figure out how to claw my way back out of that situation. And what most people, I once heard this saying before, and I really didn't understand it. But I heard this saying that like if you want to get out of debt, then take on more debt. Now I know if Dave Ramsey heard this, he'd probably be like, "What
We're
is
gonna
this?"
get shut down. All of a sudden, the video is gonna start going twitching.
Right. Hey, Dave would be like, "What is this guy talking about?" But let me explain, Dave, if you're watching. Right.
Yeah.
I'm sure Dave ain't following little old us. But here was my thought process, Kat. I owed like 50,000 to the federal government, right? I owed 10,000 in student loans. I had like another 10 or 20 I owed on credit cards. So I think I was somewhere around probably 100 grand plus in debt, right? To me, this is how my brain works. Now, everybody's brains doesn't work the same way. I did the math. I'm like, okay, I got a job. I make X amount of dollars an hour. I did the math. I was like, by the time I pay rent, pay my mom a little bit, do this, do that, I said, if I just pay this off and don't do nothing else, I think somehow I came up with it'll take me 10 to 20 years to pay all this back. So in my head, I'm like, go that route, take 10 to 20 years, or I knew I can make $100,000 again in the stock market. So it's like, do I take out another $10,000 loan somewhere, take on this calculated risk, and go back at it and pay it back off? And that's what I ended up doing. I ended up Well, actually, I didn't end up borrowing money. I did something a little bit different. I ended up getting a job at Verizon. So I was working at Verizon, and here's what I thought. I said, it's going to take me about 4 to 5 years to pay this off, which is better than 10 to 20.
Right.
I said, Verizon had tuition reimbursement. So I said, I'll go back to school and get my degree in finance because now I know what I actually want to go to school for, right? I knew that I would get a tax return, but they would keep my refund because I owed. So that would help me pay it down. And what I did was something similar to you, how you said you lived off $12,000. I figured I'm already living at home with moms. Let's not buy a new car. Let's not move out. Let's not get a big house. Let's take every penny of my commission because I made hourly plus commission. I said, let me base my essentials off my hourly and let's take the commission and get back into the stock market. And that's how I actually got the second round of funding for the stock market because I couldn't necessarily pull from credit cards because I already used them. You know what I'm saying? I had already
Right.
borrowed off the student loan the first few times. So the second time around, I was just living off the hourly, but I was making $2,000-$3,000 in commission. But the key was I didn't increase my debt or my spending. And so I was able to stack that 3 grand every single month and get back into the stock market. So that's my story
Yeah.
and why I'm excited, to teach people about it.
No, I think it's great. And I like that you said you had 3 years to learn something. So I think a lot of people think that they need to learn something instantly, or they'll see, bloggers making so much money, or online entrepreneurs or affiliate marketers earning so much money, but they're really seeing them several years in. And that might be their second, third, or fourth website that they're trying. And it's really hard to kind of, it's hard to show people like how long it actually takes to learn something, because I know that you don't want any of your students to go and take $10,000 on a credit card to go to the stock market, right? Like, but you started with the little baby steps. And so I think that's the most important lesson here is in our world of like instant gratification and people wanting to make tons of money right away, these things take time. Like I said, for me, I in May was 10 years of blogging, a decade. It just takes time. And you have to go slowly with it. And you were able to take the calculated risk because you understood what you were doing, you had the education, and you had the self-confidence to do it. I've often said, if I lost everything today, if the whole thing just blew up, I could do it again. Like if every website I own gets shut down, if like the whole thing goes, I could do it again. I could do a different type of writing, a different type of blog, I don't know, but it's more the person. And are you willing to take the time to learn something? Are you willing to put in the effort when you fail, when you owe the IRS 50 grand, when you have to move back in with your mom, when you're in a crappy grad school apartment? Like, what are you willing to do for it? And I just think that's that's probably the most important thing we can talk about today is to encourage people to start small and give it time and expect to fail, because it'd be super boring if you were just, succeeding month after month. That'd be wouldn't be exciting.
Can you imagine if we jumped on here and was like, life is good. My first trade made $1 million, never lost,
Yeah.
and All she did was buy a domain name and put it into
That's
Google, and
it.
everyone found her and believed she knew about finances.
Oh my gosh. No, and people still doubt me. So for people in your community, so I'm married to a physician who's still in training, and I've talked about like how much medical school loans he has. So hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I got this like big media appearance one time, and you know the comments, right? The comments. And someone was like, "Don't listen to anything this lady says. She and her husband are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. Like, why would you take advice from this woman? She's clearly a fraud." And I'm like, first of all, his business got nothing to do with me, first of all. So also, who you think's helping him live while he does this?
Right.
But it's kind of similar to you, right? We sat down, we ran the numbers. Stay at your job now, get 5% raises a year, put your money into retirement. What would you have at 60, 65? Or pull yourself out of your career for 10 years and borrow $500,000 to put all this information in your head. And what would your income be when you got out? And time after time, we ran the lowest paying specialties, mid, high, time after time, going to med school won out.
Absolutely. And what's interesting about what you're saying, first of all, we all have trolls in this industry, right? We all
Oh, yeah.
we all got people who are like, don't listen to them. They don't know what they're talking about. But I always like, I got a couple comments on what you said. Number one, I always like to ask people, who do you want to learn from? We are people that are in the trend. Like, there's people that figured it out 30 years ago, but we don't live in that time. We are people going through it right now, figuring it out. You know what I'm saying? Like, for example, I think about Warren Buffett. I got respect for Warren Buffett, but what I'm saying is the era that Warren Buffett came up in investing with value investing and dividends and all that, it's a totally different game today with technical analysis, machine learning, day trading, high speed traders, etc. And so I would argue, not that Warren Buffett doesn't know his stuff. I'm just saying, to learn today's version of it, you want to learn from somebody that's in the trenches, learning what is hot and what is happening right now. And so to that lady who's saying like you're living most people's either dream or nightmare. They got the nightmare of how I'm going to pay back student loans. And you're like, I'm charting the course right now. Right, my husband in there, we ran the numbers, we doing this, I'm building a site, I'm handling our money this way. And so to me, you're more of an authority when you're in it, going through it, then 20 years from now, you're like, well, back then, and people are like, well, that ain't what's happening now. Like right now, you're doing it in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of layoffs, etc. And so to me, that's more powerful. The second thing that's important about what you said that most people don't do is you said you ran the numbers.
Yep.
We ran the numbers. Most people, unfortunately, make most of their decisions off emotions.
Yes.
They do. It's like, how much does that cost? It's like, that's the wrong question. That's the wrong question. You should be asking, what's my rate of return? Right? What's the return on the investment? What's the ROI? I did a podcast about that. I don't go into stuff anymore asking how much does it cost. I go in saying, how much am I expected to make if I get that information? And that's a totally different mindset. We run the numbers, right? And so when you run the numbers, it's easy to say, come on out. Let's take on these student loan debt. Let's go to school. When you come out as a physician, let's not increase our living. Now let's take that money. It took us 10 years to borrow it. But if you come out making $300,000, it could take you 2-3 years to pay it
Yep.
back, right? All in 13 years, boom. Plus, you still got the money that you're bringing in as a financial educator and a blogger.
Yep.
It's a wrap. Year number 14, you be living like nobody else. While the person who chose the traditional route can work 40 years and still won't catch you and I, right? Like we took 5 years and we suffered like 5 to 10 years and suffered like nobody else. So we
Yes.
could live the rest like nobody else. Most people will never suffer for 5 to 10 years, but they'll also never live how we live for the
Yep.
next 40, 50, 60 years. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it goes back to the idea of that instant gratification. I mean, even right now, earning what I earn. I'm still in a 1,100 square foot house. I still try and put my makeup on while my kids go to the bathroom, sharing a bathroom with them. Both cars have over 100,000 miles on it, and it's fine. Like, I know what's coming, and I have the patience and the discipline to wait. And I knew that if I was spending all the money I had right now, I'd sure look cute in the pickup line at school. But that doesn't matter to me. Like, what is coming matters more. And I have the discipline to see that. And I really try to encourage people to think about that every day. Like, it's fine. Like, I don't need the gigantic house. I don't even know if I want that. I can barely keep this one clean, you know?
Right.
But it's about the contentment and about the fun in life, being curious and learning new things. Like, I get such joy out of my work. I don't really get joy out of, having a nicer car or something. It's not my thing. I'm sure my husband would like a nicer car, but he'll get there. But I get this is so much fun for me, and it's challenging, and the ups and the downs weekly with everything. I don't know. I get more joy out of it. So I try to encourage people, just chill, just be patient, just one day at a time. Put in the time.
Absolutely. And when I think about as far as like, well, we got a we got a mini mansion over here.
I
but the,
know, but this is recent though for you. I mean, pretty recent, a
it
couple
is
years.
recent, right? So we bought this house
Yeah,
2 years ago. But here's what I'll say about fancy things, cars, houses, and stuff like that. What people don't understand is, again, I live in my mother's two-bedroom house in like a 600-foot room in order to be in this position one day. But more importantly, I don't like houses like this. I only like them when I can say my investments paid for it, my business
yeah,
paid for it. And I think that's the piece that people don't see, right? They don't
yes,
see that, like, if I was working a job, I would never have bought this house. It would be just stupid to do so. It wouldn't even make sense because you would literally be working for the house. You'd be
yeah,
working for the gas, electrics, the taxes, etc. But it's different when you're like, okay, how many trades do I have to make? You know what I'm saying? Like, now it
yep,
becomes a different game because you're like, okay, so if I have $100,000 working for me, and that 100,000 can throw off 5,000 a month, it's like, psh, we get to stay here for free, right?
yeah.
So
I love those kind of like mind math games. I love that. And yeah, to prove my point, you've only been there 2 years, but you probably could have bought it a year or two even before that, but you waited, kind of like, okay, let me make really, really sure before I do this that I'm comfortable in what I'm doing, and this is not just like 1 year of mega success. Look, can I repeat this? And then you kind of build the confidence, and you're like, okay, yeah, I can get the house, I can get the cards.
and you know what, you just brought up something that I think is important to talk about as entrepreneurs, right? We pay taxes quarterly, first of all, so we live in a whole different life from people who pay them yearly. We have to pay quarterly, right? But in my life, and I don't know if you do the same thing, I actually don't make any big purchase I make. I actually make it the following year because I have to wait till all the quarters are in and make sure, because you're only paying estimates, right? So
Yep.
we have to make sure at the end the estimates cover everything we thought. So I actually don't make any big purchases until the following year till I truly know what last year's tax bill was, and we have to have the quarterly estimates for the upcoming year. So, like, how did you feel when you went
That
from like getting a refund to like now you paying quarterly?
Oh God, I try to remember the last time I got a refund, man. Like, I don't even know. Probably that grad school apartment. That was probably it. So, yeah, it's a lot. And look, I too have made mistakes with taxes. I remember just thinking I was so diligent, just talking to my accountant all the time, and him being like, "All right, we did really good. You only owe $12,000," and me being like, "Wow, cool, only 12. Okay." But didn't I pay every quarter? He's like, yeah, we got really close. I'm like, super close. And this is like kind of right in the beginning of me moving from like into like the 6-figure and beyond mode, where it's like, it's hard to know, because you could have a really good quarter. You could end the year with a really, like last year in December, I made 3 times that month what I made like any other month. It just, the way the invoices fell and the projects came, and you have to be prepared for that tax hit. So it's it helps me to be disciplined, because you can't get too excited, and you cannot already spend it in your mind. Like you're saying, you have to wait. You have to like see how bad it is. And then, yeah, that's how it goes.
Yeah, it's a different life because I live a year ahead, or a year. I live a year ahead and I spend a year behind. That's a
Yeah,
tweetable. If my team is on here, we need, that's a
get
tweetable.
that.
No, but what I mean by that is because a lot of people will say, well, what does it take to go full time? And maybe you could share from from your side, what does it take to go full time? But for me, what it took to go full time is, I say you need to have a year's worth of living expenses. So if I'm investing, I could go a year without making a profit from a trade, and my family won't worry about the lights, the mortgage, none of
Yeah,
that. So I live a year ahead, but I also spend a year behind, because even though we made X last year, we just finished doing all of our taxes and wrapping it up for July 15th. Then we got the tax bill. By the way, by the way, I can say for the first time we got a refund, but it's not how you think. Our
yeah.
refunds is different.
You
I
overspent. That's what.
I've been overpaying quarterly just
Yeah,
because I knew our revenues were increasing. So I
yeah,
increased how much we were paying, and we actually spent more money on marketing and some other stuff we were able to write off. And it's like, oh, we got a refund
yeah.
finally, but
That's
it's
fun.
not really a refund. We've been
Yeah, no,
overpaying,
you spent too much. You overpaid.
right? But the point is, now that we got that bill and we settled for last year, and I've already paid Q1 and Q2 taxes this year, now I'm like, okay, here's what we can spend or buy, or whatever the case may be. So when it comes to going full time, you literally need that type of discipline. The type of people who like, I don't know where the money goes, or I just can't help myself. I just had to
Yeah,
buy a purse. I'm like, and you trying to be an
yeah,
entrepreneur or an investor? You trying to
yeah.
walk away from your job? Right? You need somebody giving you half every 2 weeks if that's
Yeah.
the problem you got.
The discipline required is extreme, because once you get, a good 5, 6, 7 years into your business, like you might have a month where you're like, I could just go buy a car this month. Oh my gosh. Like how, but you don't know what's going to happen the next month or the next month or the next month. So if you have like I could buy a car month, you got to really have the discipline to say, all right, now I've got some like running room, right? Some runway is what I call it. And it took me a long time to get to a point where I could pay myself the exact same every month. Like I had to build enough of business reserves to say, okay, like here's my salary. Because for a while it was like, ooh, last month was so I'm going to pay myself less. And that means we have to do less. But next month is great. So it took me so long, years, to get to a point where there was enough of a buildup. But once I got to that point, it became really nice. Then you can budget, then you can plan your expenses, then you can look at your bank account and say, all right, I've got 9, 10 months where if something happened to me or whatever, I could go 10 months and figure something else out. But it takes time. For me, I went full time when for 6 months straight, my business made more than my day job. I remember the first month it happened, I was like, oh my gosh, I think I made, and it was like nothing crazy. It was like, at that point I was like teaching, and I was like, I made $3,200 my business and $3,000 teaching. And I was like this is the most money I've ever had ever. And, but then, it just kind of kept going. And so I felt like, all right, this was steady enough. I did not save enough. I think I only saved maybe like 10 grand. And I was pregnant with my twins. And so it was like January 2014. I was like, I'm pregnant. I'm about to have these babies. I've had 6 months where it's earned more, and it's a good time to stop. And I'm just going to go for it. And yeah. And then I had my twins in March of that year.
Right. Of that year, right?
I didn't earn that much that year, the first year out. But that's, you kind of have to have a pattern that you can trust yourself and trust what you're doing is right. You can't just have this one exciting month or this one exciting sale or this one exciting trade, one exciting course launch and think that you're going to be able to replicate that.
Absolutely. And one of the things for me, what had to happen when I went full time, similar to you, I also wanted my investments and my business making a certain amount consistently.
Consistently.
But the one thing that for me, depending on if people follow me, I've been interviewed on different podcasts, but most people may have known the story. Like my business, separate from my investments, my business was doing $500,000, and I was still working at
Yep.
Comcast. I worked at Comcast, and I'm coming to work every day, and my business on the side is doing $500,000, right? Plus, I still have my investments. I don't,
Yep.
depending on what circle you follow, most people don't know that story, but my point was,
Very conservative approach to the.
some people be like, soon as I make exactly what I made at my job, I'm out. And I was like, no, I need the 3-4 exit because there's taxes. You're trying to
Yep.
do your own health insurance, right?
Yep.
Then you need to be putting money away to make sure you never go back. Like, I know what it feels like to leave corporate and go
Yep.
back. And I'm telling you, that's a humbling experience. And so when I leave again, I'm never coming back. Side note, I did leave again, lost some money, had to go back. But the third time, we're not even gonna get into that.
You kind of brought up a memory for me that I had kind of forgotten, that I think my twins were maybe 2 or 3 and like all in the same month. So at that point I'd been making most of my money from freelance writing and like 3 clients in a row were like, "Oh, I just got bought out and we're not hiring freelancers anymore and we're going to do this." And it was like 3 in a row and it was like half my income like died. And I went and looked for jobs and I like got a babysitter and like went to downtown Detroit and interviewed for a job and like, wore a suit and did the whole thing. But the drive, I even took an Uber so I didn't have to park in downtown Detroit and like not know where I was going. The drive was so long, and then someone else was watching my kids, and then I drove back and I was like, I cannot do this every day.
Right.
And I have got to figure it out. And just that experience of going to the interview and coming back, I just like doubled down and went crazy and then picked it back up, in another month or two and like solved it. So I've definitely had the moment of like, clearly this isn't working and it's just too disruptive and it's, I can't plan anything. And like my life's at the whim of these people, these clients. And, but you figure it out. And so six
Yeah.
and a half years strong now. No,
Absolutely.
no one could ever like tolerate me. I'd be like, "So we can work from home, right? I got to go do this thing, right? I got to go work out, right?" I just could never do it now. I'm too spoiled.
Oh man, you couldn't pay me to go to a traditional work setting. It's tough. It's tough now. By the way, I just turned up my audio. A couple people said my audio was low, so let me know if the audio is good. While you're letting me know, I'm gonna put our websites up here. That way, if you haven't, I already put our Instagram handles up, but that's Kat Alford's website. Obviously, you guys know I'm over at thebrownreport.com, but those are both up on the screen right now. And we're just checking, make sure the audio is good. I know there's like a couple second delay, so it'll probably take a minute for people to respond. But Kat, your website's up there. Matter of fact, I'll bring in the Instagram handle in a second. So let's talk about, and then maybe we'll open it up to some questions from everybody that's on the live stream. So let me know. So being in the financial education space, awesome. TV Boy said the audio is better. I see a couple PTU members in the house. Nice. So Kat, being in the financial in the financial industry like we are, what's something that you see from like, what's one of the toughest parts about talking money all the time and being a financial person or personality? And then what's like one of the most rewarding parts about being in this industry?
I think the hardest part are maybe the assumptions that people make about you. and maybe how uncomfortable it makes people who are close to you, like friends or family. Like I have a lot of people being like, I know this is like a new bag, but like it was a gift. And I'm like, I don't care what kind of bag you buy. You don't have to explain it to me. Like it's fine. You do you. Or people who like might say, oh, you worship money and all you care about is making money. It's really like the way that you and I think is still like we are way in the minority. Just the way that we think about money and what we believe it can do and how we believe, right? The more money you make, the more good you can do in the world. And it's like not an evil and bad thing. All that stuff is like way in the minority, the way that we think about it. So that's kind of hard day to day. But the most rewarding part, obviously, is emails that I get from people. I paid off a credit card because of you. Like I've watched you for 2 years and I've always wanted to start my own business and I finally started it. And just I love helping people make a big change because I really think the fastest way to solve any money situation is making more, not spending less. And I always just try to like teach people like you have so much potential that you don't realize. There are so many hours in the day that you might not be utilizing that you could do something really cool and leave a legacy for your family for many generations. And so I love hearing back from people because you say the same things over and over again. You're like, is anyone listening? Is anyone going to do something? And then you get it and you're like, yes, I'm so excited for you. So that makes up for any awkward day-to-day interactions. So.
Hey, similar, like people don't talk to me about the purse that they bought, but on the opposite side, I have those family members like, I'm gonna get in the stock market every time they see me. I'm getting started, and it's almost like I didn't even say anything. Like like, they just see me and they like feel like they have to say like, I'm getting in this month, right? I'm like, okay, like
you do you,
right? Like
yeah.
we really don't walk around talking finance like all day, and
people don't like it.
Yeah, and honestly, with our friends, sometimes it's like it's good to have a day off because I'm like, I don't feel like talking with you about money, and you're not gonna do it anyway.
I also feel like people assume that like I'm perfect with money, and so I try to all the time talk about I made this dumb mistake and I did this and there was this time and I got out of this credit card debt and that, and I try to share it. It's like I share it all the time, but people still assume that I've never made a money mistake, even though I'm really trying to be like, guys, like you said, we're in it right now. We're in the trenches, paying off.
Absolutely. And you bring up a good point about making money mistakes because as an investor, maybe if anyone's on here from your community, when people see the trades I post, like I made 100,000, or I think the last one I posted, we made 225,000 in 2 weeks, but I showed the whole statement. When you look at the whole statement, there's a couple times in that I lost 50,000, 20,000, or something like that. I lost like 50 and then 20 in order to get to that state where I had made the 220, right? And so to your point, it's good for people to know we're not perfect or like Jason doesn't lose money ever. No. I lose
all
money.
The time.
I lose money all the time, right? But when my losses are smaller than my wins, and that's ideally the game at the end of the day. But I think it's so true is that we're not perfect. And I love not being perfect because it makes me qualified to teach. When people be like, what makes you qualified to teach about the stock market? Or if I live at home with my mom, what makes you qualified to say you can do it? It's like, because I went through that.
Yeah.
What makes you qualified to say, here's how you get out of $100,000 in debt and own the federal government 50,000? I had a tax lien, by the way. I had a tax lien, so my credit was hit, and now my credit score is over 800. But it's like, I can stand here and tell you it's not the end of the world, or give me 5 years, we can get you here because I went through it. It's not something I read in the book. It's not. The reason I can get on camera and say, you really want to get involved with the stock market? You really want to cut your debt? Move back home with your mom. People be like, well, you don't know my mama. No, you don't know my mama, and you don't know where we live. We was on 7 Mile in Detroit, between 7 and 8 Mile, the hood. Okay, bars on our window. I should post a picture. I had to park. This is a funny story. by the way, we don't even have a driveway in the hood in my house because we didn't have a garage. None of that. I mean, these are literally like community houses. But I had to park my car when I moved back home. I had to drive on the grass and park my car in between our house and the neighbor's house because I was scared somebody would steal my rims for parking on the street, because that's what they do. And they steal rims or they break the window and steal the cars. And so I'm saying all that to say, like, going through it allows us to be qualified to tell you, like, if you really want this bad enough, there's things that you can do. And I can tell you to do it. And I can also tell you that it ain't that bad. You'll get over it. And it won't be that long before you get back to the other side. Like, you can tell someone you can live off $12,000. Why? Because I did it. You did it. And
You can make
it's
a
so
lot of
powerful.
progress in just a few years. And for people who are not familiar with Detroit, like my husband has like one rule, like don't go to any of the single digit miles, right? So we don't go beneath 10 mile because it won't be a good situation. So Jason's like, I literally grew up on 7 Mile, and I'm like, my husband told me never to go there. Like, I mean, so it's just an amazing, amazing transformation. But it takes time.
It definitely takes time. One of the toughest things about being a financial educator for me, I don't know if it's that tough anymore, but like, no matter what you do, you will always get someone who's like I could show a trade and then someone will be like, show me your tax returns. I could show my tax returns. They'll be like, well, show me the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And so like, I've gotten to this point where it's like, I don't do the proof thing with people anymore. I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm living my best life. I'm
Yeah.
at home in the middle of the day with my family. Like, whether you believe it or not, I'm going out
Yeah.
in the back and jumping in the lake, right? Whether
Yeah.
you believe it or not, Kat Alford, Dorothea Kelly, these are people we associate with that are in the money game. So like, we have nothing to prove to a random stranger. But I think that's probably one of my biggest irritations is
Yeah.
people are so skeptical and they want a lot of stuff for free. And I'm like, we're doing something for free right now on
Yeah.
YouTube. And it's like,
This
they
is
want
great.
more.
Yeah.
But it's like, don't be so skeptical, man. Like,
Well,
I,
and don't I think people are looking for any excuse why it won't work for them. And we're not saying that you have to start a business or be a blogger or be a writer or even be a stock market trader, but pick something that you're interested in and something that you love to do. If you're in a spot where you're just kind of sick and tired and you want to earn more and you want to make a change, but don't look for any reason for it not to work out. It takes a lot of trial and error, and you're seeing both of us like over a decade into the journey. So, but in the beginning, we would have been like, don't do that.
I think in the beginning we'd be like, I think it's gonna work, but I'm not
You
sure,
have to
right?
like hold on to the winds that came like once every 3 months. You're like, wait, I saw the thing,
Right. It's like, I don't know if you want to follow me right now, but
Yeah.
check back in
But
about
just
five
you
years.
wait. Just you wait.
And then I think the most rewarding part, for me most recently, like, our members made me cry on the webinar. We might
Aw.
repost it or something, but when we had so many people talking about how much money they had made from different trades and different investments, and I just
Yeah.
lost it.
It's so cool. It's like people change their lives because of the things you taught. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I think I lost it too because like we put so much into this. Like, people don't know how much this camera costs. There's two lights right there. There's a microphone out of view that you can't see. Like, people don't understand how much we put into making sure the audio is clean. The lights are here. I'm actually sweating because the lights are right, but they don't see that. They just see like a good show. They don't see you up at night trying to figure out how to build a website, how to encrypt the data, how to take payments online so you can help people, how to build they don't see you recording and like, man, what's the best way to explain it to people so that they understand, and re-recording and rewriting. They don't see all of that.
Yeah.
But when you put that much love, that much work, that much energy into it, and then people start having success or some type of forward movement, for me, I just lost it. I was like, I'm so
Yeah.
happy.
Well, it's your legacy in play before your eyes. It really is.
Yeah, because sometimes we put all this work into it and we don't know how it's going to turn out. Yeah, is
You
anybody going to
don't always
sign
get all.
up?
Sometimes you don't get feedback or you don't know, and then you'll get a message and someone's like, I've been following you since you had your twins, but this is the first time I've emailed you, and I just want to say that you made a difference, or I did this or I did that. And so there's a lot of people like quietly watching too.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. They're kind of like, let me check this girl out. Let me check this guy out. By the way, let me put the Instagram handles up on there. If you want to follow Kat Alford, you can follow her at Catherine C. Alford. And then I'm obviously at Brown Report on Instagram. So we got about 10 more minutes. Let me see. Should we open it up for
Sure.
questions?
Yeah.
Let's do it. So if you're watching on the live stream, I'll read the questions out so that myself and Kat can answer them. But if you got any questions about, Kat's expertise is, blogging, being an entrepreneur, financial education from a budgeting standpoint, somewhat taxes. We're not tax experts, but we can answer some questions on that. How to set a budget, how to come from 12,000 to making six figures, how to run numbers and make decisions for your family. And then obviously I'm in the similar space, but more so geared towards the investments and stocks. So what questions do you guys have? So let me see here. We got Nikisha. Let me see if I can pop her up on the screen. Kat, I don't know if you'll see this or not. And let me move it to where it's more boom right there. So Nikisha said, I appreciate this. If it wasn't for the Brown Report, I would not have considered stocks or want to trade. So we appreciate you, Nikisha. So I'm glad to hear that we played a part in it. Kat, I'm going to swing this one over to you and let me know your thoughts. Alicia Lowe says, tax specialist, any tips on getting one? I can share my thoughts, but I'll let you, if you want to go first. Or I
Yeah,
can
I
go
bet after
first.
your story, everyone's like, "Oh my gosh." I think that you have to actually get on the phone or in person, and you have to interview a lot of different people. And if your warning bells go off or something doesn't feel right, then then it's probably not a good person for you. And I have my accountant specializes in online entrepreneurs, and he is super familiar with like freelancers and going from an LLC to an S corp and all of these things that online entrepreneurs have to deal with. So I like working with him, and he's super super honest. And sometimes my husband is like, "Could we find someone less honest?" Like, do we have to? He's kidding, but and I really appreciate how I like someone who's like very conservative when it comes to that. So yeah, I think it just takes some trial and error, right, Jason? I mean, you don't want to. I mean, none of it is easy, and it should like it's not fun to do your taxes, and none of it should just be the super like fun, great, easy thing. Like it should hurt. It shouldn't be like Jason's guy who was like, "Don't worry about it. Just put that Lexus. Just write that off." Whereas
Yeah.
I would ask and be like, "Are you serious? Like, don't you dare try to put a car on a deduction."
So, and that's good. That's good insight too. One of the, and to your point, ask a lot of questions. And so I ask, so one, my tax tip would be ask a lot of questions, but I think what really helps is being surrounded by other entrepreneurs because we talk. I'm
Yep,
surrounded by
lots of
other
it.
entrepreneurs, other investors, and I'm like, hey, did your guy let you write that off? And then what code did you put that under? Okay, I go back to my guy, like, how come we can't use that code, right? So that helps a lot. And sometimes we talk in the industry, like, who are you using and what are they
Yeah.
doing and how much are they charging you? So that's number one. Number two, I would say you cannot 100% rely on them, even though that they're the expert. I'll give you a prime example. We spent, I guess we spent about, and this was less than we normally spend. We spent like $65,000 in ads or marketing or whatever. Even my company, because it's a team of them that I use now, they sent me the taxes and stuff back, and I'm like, you still got to check them over. I checked them over. They literally forgot somehow. They overlooked to
Wow.
put that we spent 65. So that was like literally 65 grand that we weren't able to write off.
Yep.
That like totally made a difference on whether I owed or whether I got something back. And so even though they're the experts, they're human. And so I'm always paying attention to tax code. Like I heard something when this president got elected. What does that mean for us? Like you
Yeah.
still have to be abreast of what's going on and then getting in a circle of other people that are making that kind of money so y'all can talk amongst each other. Because one thing I think people underestimate is I consider myself rich, and I don't mean rich money. I mean rich with health, rich with my time, rich with good friends like you. So rich doesn't always mean money, but I consider myself a rich person. And what's cool about being around other rich people is we talk. You know, if Kat was like, "What camera are you using?" or "What are you doing? Where are you running your ads at?" or "How are you doing?" It's like I'm not like, "Well, I don't want to tell you." I'm like, "Oh, girl, come over. Let's walk through this. I'm gonna show you how I do it. Do this. Get this." Right? We talk, and so rich people talk. They like, "Did you write this off? Hey, you know that tax code changing. If you're thinking about moving this over into real estate, you should consider it this year." So it's so important to be around other rich people. And I say rich, meaning rich in life, rich with the information that they don't feel like they're scared to share it with you because you're their competition. That's not rich. That's actually poor. But get around other rich people because they like to talk and share. And
And if you're the richest and the wealthiest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
you're in the wrong room. And that's no disrespect to your current friends,
No.
but you got to get some new friends, right? I don't
The
even know why
money.
Drake said no new friends. You need some new friends.
Yeah. You need people to make you level up.
Absolutely. Let me see. Um, Wilfred said, how much do you pay when you day trade? So it's not about paying taxes for day trading. It's more about if it's short term or long term capital gains. And so if it's less than a year, you pay one rate. And if it's over a year, you pay another rate. I don't know the rate off the top of my. I usually would spout it out, but I don't even know it off the top of my head. So I'm just gonna have you Google it: short-term capital gains and long-term capital gains. Oh, I'm gonna let Kat take this one. Douglas said, "I have a 6-month emergency account now. Should I have a year worth?" So talk about emergency account, especially when the pandemic hit. What's your thoughts
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah, I think a 6 month emergency fund is really good. Usually the recommendation is 3 to 6 months of expenses that is just in a separate spot. You're not using it to invest, you're not using it to have fun with. It's just hitting there for a rainy day when a pandemic hits. I think 6 months is good. I remember like in the heat of the pandemic, because we have about 5 months right now. And I remember in like the heat of the pandemic, me being like, oh my God, I wish I had a year because this is so crazy. But that's a lot. A year's worth of income is a lot of money to tie up that could be invested. So I think you're good with 6 months. Again, always talking about the runways. You know, if something happened, you lost everything, you lost your job, you couldn't do anything. 6 months is a good chunk of time to get yourself back on your feet to take care of your expenses. And I would have like a really healthy 6 month, like not bare bones, not like I could barely buy groceries, like, nice, healthy 6 months. I think it's good.
Absolutely. I second that. I'm in the year camp, but it's because I had to go back home twice. I ain't going
Yeah.
back again, right?
Yeah.
So
Like I said, I was kind of like wishing I had the year when all this hit, but I'm like, I can figure it out.
absolutely. So this is another one for Kat. I think the name is Suze. Says at Kat Alford, what would you do different with money now that you have this? Now that you have some, as a financial educator, do you trade in the stock market, um, or do you let it ride, invest in whole?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, what do I do differently now that I have some? Not much. I don't do that much differently. I'm pretty low key. I invest a lot in myself and my business. And my husband always says like I have more domain names than shoes. Like I'm not really like interested in the material things. Like I love buying courses and learning things. And so I really do invest a lot in myself, in my work. Like I said, don't really. I mean, the house I have now is not much bigger than that apartment I had when I was only making $12,000 a year. I don't trade. I'm not a day trader in the stock market, and Jason knows this. I buy index funds. I buy and hold. For me, it's like my brain carries so much information, and so I'm way big on automation. I automate all my bills. For me, I'm like, great. I just buy the index fund. I let it do its thing automatically for me. The more things that I don't have to touch on a day-to-day basis, right now, as busy mom, that's what I like to do. But obviously, I have tons of respect for what Jason does and how long it took him to learn what he knows. Also, a couple of his trades could pay off my med school loan, so maybe we need my husband's med school loans. Maybe we should talk more.
And that's why I loved having you on, because
Yeah,
like we're two people in the same space, but like you say, you do index funds. I don't really do index funds, but it's like it's cool for people to know that there is no
yeah,
wrong way. It's like what way works for you.
yep,
And I think you'll find the way that you like our house isn't that much bigger. Like you are who you are at the core, right?
yeah,
So like you don't just start buying and blowing money once you get it. Like I
yeah.
still will like negotiate a good deal, even if I have the money to pay for it.
Totally.
I'm like, is that the best price you can do?
A 100%. Yeah, because why not? Because any money that you save, you can use to invest, and like 30 years down the road, you could be taking your grandkids on a nice trip. I mean, it's worth it to ask. I love negotiating too. Like, I'm never gonna, even if I can afford something super fancy, I love the haggle. I love the moment of like negotiating things. So yeah, you are who you are, and I'm sure as we go along, we'll get a little bit more space as these kids get bigger. But for right now, it's not much has changed between now and then.
That's what's up. We'll take a few more questions. I know we're at the top of the hour, then we'll wrap.
Yep.
By the way, if you're not following Kat Alford or myself, you can check out both of our websites below. And then we'll be back next week. We're doing this series, Money Mondays, every Monday. Miss Jones said, Jason, after taking a big loss on a trade, what is the mindset you use to continue trading with confidence?
Good.
And then if Kat has any similar experience, I'd love the feedback. So my mindset after taking a big loss is two things. Number one, you can carry that loss forward and write off 3,000 of the loss every year. So if you lost $30,000, you can write off $3,000 a year for the next 10 years. So what that tells me is as long as I stay in the game, I'm getting this money back one way or another, first of all. Second, though, when I take a $30,000 loss or some type of big loss, my mindset is, how can I coach someone through a loss if I've never been through a loss? You know what I'm saying? And so for me, I look at it like, ooh, I'm going to be able to share with someone how I came back from this because I'm going through it. So that's how I look at losses. I'm like, all right, cool. This is going to be a real sweet story when I tell people how I came out of this or how I came back from it. So that's how I look at losses. Kat, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a loss, it's a lesson, right? So as long as you can still put food on the table,
Ooh.
it's you learn every time. Again, it'd be super boring if you won all the time every day. So expect the losses, prepare for them. We're not like hinging our whole family's future on this one trade, right? So, be smart about it. But yeah, there's always a lesson in the loss for sure.
That's a tweetable. It's not a loss, it's a lesson. Somebody send that out on Twitter. So cool. I think, matter of fact, I think that's a good one to end on. So Kat, thanks for hanging out with me.
Yeah.
Thank you everybody from joining us and checking us out. Make sure you tune in next week, 1 p.m. Money Mondays. We're committed to talking about money, talking about investment, budgeting, all things finances. So thanks for tuning in. Kat, thanks for hanging out with me.
Thanks, my friend. I appreciate it.
All right. We'll see you guys later.
Bye.